Good morning from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center, where at this hour we are just 36 minutes away from the departure of the Soyuz MS-19 from the International Outpost to begin the journey home for NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei, completing a year-long journey on the orbital outpost, along with his Russian crewmates Pyotr Dubrov and Soyuz commander Anton Shkaplerov. The crew, about 2.5 hours ago, moved into the Soyuz MS-19, closed the hatch to begin their undocking preparations that will begin with the command to open up the hooks holding the Soyuz to the Rassvet module. This was the scene just after 11 p.m. Central Time last night, when Vande Hei on the left, Shkaplerov on the right, and Dubrov facing the camera bid farewell to their Expedition 66 crewmates and made their way through the hatchway to the MS-19 spacecraft, closed the hatch, conducted leak checks, and then donned their Sokol launch and entry suits to begin the process of preparing for the physical separation of their Soyuz vehicle from the International Space Station. We are a little less than 5 hours away from the time in which the Soyuz will touch down on a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of south-central Kazakhstan, where Russian search and recovery forces and a NASA contingent of support personnel are currently in the air en route from the staging city of Karaganda to an intermediate station point at Zhezkazgan, which is to the northwest of the landing site, where the personnel will board Russian military Mi-8 helicopters for a short ride down to the landing site itself to greet the crew once the Soyuz touches down. That landing site about 90 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, the Russian search and recovery forces and the NASA personnel will be deployed from Zhezkazgan in a half a dozen Mi-8 helicopters, with 2 additional helicopters to the southwest near the launch site at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the unlikely event that the Soyuz winds up in a ballistic landing short of its intended landing zone. Coming to an end for Vande Hei, Dubrov, and Shkaplerov, a very eventful mission on board the International Space Station. For Vande Hei and Dubrov, they are completing 355 days in space and aboard the International Space Station. They will have completed 5,680 orbits of the Earth, a mission spanning 150.6 million miles, the equivalent of about 312 round trips to the moon. Vande Hei's logging of 355 days in space is the longest single spaceflight by a U.S. astronaut in history, eclipsing Scott Kelly's mark several years ago of 340 days. Vande Hei, in his 2 missions to the International Space Station, winds up with 523 days in space, putting him 3rd on the all-time list of U.S. astronauts for endurance. Pyotr Dubrov, of course, completing the first flight in his career, 355 days over the course of Expeditions 64, 65, and 66. For Soyuz commander Anton Shkaplerov, who arrived on the International Space Station back in October, he is wrapping up 176 days in space and on board the International Space Station, 2,816 orbits of the Earth, 74.6 million miles, and will have logged 708 days in space on his 4 flights to the International Space Station, putting him 7th on the all-time endurance list of all space travelers. As mentioned, in Kazakhstan, where all of the activity will be taking place just a few hours from now, the team of search and recovery forces from Rosaviatsia, the civilian air and civil patrol for Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, and NASA personnel led by ISS program manager Joel Montalbano are en route to the landing to Zhezkazgan, the intermediary staging point for tonight's landing operations, Soyuz, where the Russian Mi-8 helicopters are already pre-staged. They'll get off that Antonov, they'll board their helicopters, and in sequential fashion, right around the time of the deorbit burn, will begin to take off from the Zhezkazgan airport for about a 35-minute flight to the southeast to the landing site, where they will form in an oval-shaped pattern around the point at which the Soyuz will be descending under its large orange and white parachute toward a touchdown scheduled at 6:28 and 36 seconds a.m. Central Time, 7:28:36 Eastern Time, which will be 5:28 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, about 2 hours and 20 minutes before sunset. One by one, the three crew members will be extracted from the Soyuz vehicle. They'll be placed in reclining chairs next to the capsule for a few minutes of readaptation to gravity. For Vande Hei and Dubrov, the first time they will have felt the pull of gravity against their bodies in almost a full year since they launched on the Soyuz MS-18 spacecraft in April of 2021. They'll be taken into a nearby inflatable medical tent that will be erected by support personnel from RSC Energia. They'll get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits, climb into flight suits, and board helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to Karaganda, where the crew will split up, Vande Hei boarding a NASA jet heading back home to Houston, Dubrov and Shkaplerov boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for the flight back to their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. Some 27 minutes from now, the command will be issued to open up the hooks holding the Soyuz MS-19 to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing port of the Russian segment of the station. Under the manual control of Soyuz commander Anton Shkaplerov, the Soyuz will back away and conduct a 13-second burn of the Soyuz engines to reach a point about 70 meters away from the International Space Station. At that point, Shkaplerov will put the brakes on. Pyotr Dubrov will move from the center section of the Soyuz, called the descent module, up to the upper portion, called the orbital module, where, armed with digital cameras and a video camera, he will begin about 30 minutes of photography of the International Space Station. Shkaplerov will manually fly the Soyuz from that axis over to the Prishal module, the nearby port to which the Soyuz MS-21 is docked to. That's the new node module that arrived back in November, hooking up to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. And at a distance of 230 meters from the station, Dubrov will continue his photography and videography of the Russian segment of the station. Finally, at about 3:03 a.m. Central Time, Shkaplerov will conduct a phasing burn to move away from the station for good to a point about 32 kilometers away from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that will take place at 5:34 a.m. Central Time, 6:34 a.m. Eastern Time. That deorbit burn will be 4 minutes, 39 seconds in duration, slowing the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. The pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz is scheduled just after 6 a.m. Central Time. That will precede entry interface as the Soyuz plunges back into the atmosphere, its heat shield repelling temperatures building up around the Soyuz of about 2,500 degrees. After they exit that regime, then the commands will be issued for parachute deployment at about 10.7 kilometers above the Earth. It will be in two portions. First, a drogue chute will be deployed, followed by a main parachute, and then just seconds before touchdown, soft landing engines will be fired in a braking maneuver, and the Soyuz will be home, Vande Hei and Dubrov returning to Earth after a year in space, Shkaplerov after 176 days. Here in Mission Control in Houston, the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers on console at this hour, led by Flight Director Rick Henfling in the red tie. To his left is Flight Director Chloe Mering, and to Henfling's right is astronaut Tracy Caldwell Dyson, a veteran of both shuttle and Soyuz missions to the International Space Station. She has been talking to the rest of the station crew when required. The Expedition 66 increment will be history at the moment of undocking that is coming up about 25 minutes from now at 2:21 a.m. Central Time. At that point, Expedition 67 will formally begin under the command of NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn, who took over command of the station from Anton Shkaplerov in a change of command ceremony early Tuesday morning. Marshburn, along with NASA astronauts Raja Chari and Caleb Barron, European Space Agency astronaut Matthias Maurer, and Russian cosmonauts Oleg Artemyev, Denis Matveyev, and Sergei Korsakov will remain on board the station as a bevy of activity is about to unfold, including the arrival in early April of the first private astronaut mission, courtesy of Axiom Space. That's scheduled launch no earlier than April 6th on a SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle from the Kennedy Space Center.
Astrid, Moscow. Please proceed your last flight check measurement.
Давление сейчас 810.
So the SR pressure is 810 millimeters. And what about BO?
Какое давление?
At this hour, as the Soyuz MS-19 crew prepares for undocking with everything in order, they're suited up in the descent module. Anton Shkaplerov, the Soyuz commander, operating under the call sign of Astra. You'll hear that referred to in their translation from Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. Shkaplerov in the center seat of the Soyuz, flanked to his left by board engineer number 1, Pyotr Dubrov, and to his right by NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei, who is serving tonight as board engineer number 2. The International Space Station is currently traveling at an altitude of some 260 statute miles above the Earth from northwest to southeast, traveling southwest of Mexico City in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Now just 21 minutes prior to undocking.
Открыл КВД. СРБО.
КВД PV valve for SRBO is open. Copy.
Last week, I had an opportunity to conduct an interview with Mark Vande Hei on board the International Space Station, in which he talked about this morning's undocking that will enable him to depart the place that has been his home now for almost a year, and the operations that will follow the separation of the Soyuz from the International Space Station. Mark, let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of landing day. Undocking in the Soyuz MS-19 for you and your crewmates will be a little bit different than we typically see. There's station keeping that will be built in to allow Pyotr Dubrov to capture photography and videography of the station before you depart for good. Can you discuss that aspect of your landing day and what's involved?
Sure. In fact, I suspect it will be very similar to what we did when the crew on my Soyuz was myself, Oleg Novitsky, and Pyotr Dubrov. When we did a fly around just to get to a new docking port, Pyotr in that situation also had to take photos. So I suspect what will happen is Pyotr will change his orientation as he gets out of his seat. So he's kind of laying across the commander's lap so that he has enough room to open the hatch. It's very, very tight in the descent module. All three of us were located. And then once he gets that hatch open, he'll just be able to kind of sit up and drift up into the habitation compartment. He'll spend some time up there because there's a window that will face towards the space station, and he'll take pictures from that module. Meanwhile, I'll be sitting and looking out the window over my right shoulder, trying to soak it all in, and Anton will be actively monitoring and flying the spacecraft. When Pyotr is done with his photos, he'll return, just doing everything I just described in reverse, and he'll be back to business as usual.
And so when you back away from the station for good, this place that has been your home for a year, what do you think will be going through your mind as you bid farewell to this huge complex that you've lived and worked in?
That's a tough one to answer. I'm sure I'll have lots of conflicting emotions. Enthusiasm for the opportunities back on the Earth to see my family, to be present physically with my wife, where I haven't seen her, I haven't been in her vicinity since January of last year. So that'll be wonderful. But at the same time, I'll also recognize that this will be the end of a phase of my life. I'm pretty confident that I will not be, in fact, I promised my wife I will not be flying to space again. So that will be bittersweet. I'm very, very grateful to have had this amazing opportunity to come up to the space station, to be up here with such wonderful people who I will consider friends for the rest of my life, to serve my country and all of humanity. So there will be gratitude for that, enthusiasm for the future, and a little bit of sadness too, because I'll be shutting the door on that. I won't be able to come back, and this is a very, very special place.
You can stow the MV for the Soyuz.
Mark Vande Hei last week waxing on his upcoming departure from the International Space Station. He and Dubrov launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on April 9th, 2021 on the Soyuz MS-18 spacecraft, along with Oleg Novitsky. Novitsky returned to Earth back in October of last year. Anton Shkaplerov launched to the International Space Station last October and is returning home as the Soyuz commander with Vande Hei and Dubrov this morning.
350.
We are 15 minutes away from the issuance of the command that will initiate the opening of the hooks holding the Soyuz to the Rassvet module of the International Space Station on the Earth-facing port of the Russian segment of the complex. That process will take about 90 seconds to complete. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another to allow physical separation to occur. That's scheduled at 2:21 a.m. Central Time, 3:21 a.m. Eastern Time.
System is on. And
at the landing site, the latest weather forecast issued by the Spaceflight Meteorology Group here at the Johnson Space Center calls for a few clouds with bases at 23,000 feet at the time of touchdown, about 2/8 total sky coverage, and temperatures about 45 degrees Fahrenheit to greet the three crew members upon their parachute-assisted touchdown.
Астрей, как приняли? Можно...
Astray, how copy?
Первом. Время шагбала не...
In 160, 164.
487.
Is the amount in the spherical tanks 1 and 2 correspondingly, and propellant is 487. Okay, we copy.
Контролируем А6.
Please monitor A6 and A8.
А6 не горит.
A6 and A8 are not illuminated.
Так, проверяем.
Copy. And let's check the periscope.
Центральный светофильтр.
Central light filter
Открыт.
is open.
Шторка.
Curtain
Открыт.
is also open.
Экран.
The screen
На бесконечность.
set to infinity,
Курсовым
and the
80.
indicator is 180,
Да.
0.
Включаем вертикал 18. Готов. Команду. Все, давай.
Are you ready to send the 18 command? Yes.
Контролируйте перекладку.
And please verify that the switching goes smoothly.
Мне не видно. Отсвечивает.
I can't tell really. The LED Vizir Prichal is no longer illuminated.
Так, Росвинтер зафиксирован.
All right, translational and rotational hand controllers are in the operational position.
The translation you're hearing from the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow as they talk to Anton Shkaplerov and Pyotr Dubrov about some of the processes for the still photography and the videography that Dubrov will be conducting from the orbital module, the top section of the three-section Soyuz vehicle, after undocking and after Shkaplerov manually flies the Soyuz back away from the station to an initial distance of 70 meters.
Thruster selection A11
Тоже горит.
and A13 are illuminated. Moscow.
Оба 11-13.
A11 and A13 are illuminated.
Коллектора, да, сейчас.
So you have both manifolds selected, right? Select
Выбираем первый.
the first one, please. The first one?
Коллектор.
Yes, the first one.
Выбираем 11.
All right.
This view now from a balcony camera overlooking the Russian Mission Control Room
No longer.
for International Space Station operations outside of Moscow.
And G6 is no longer illuminated anymore either.
Перешел на формат ТВС.
I switched to TVS display and I'm activating closed transmitter.
Петь, Г6 не горит, да?
So, Pyotr, could you please confirm that Golf or G6 is no longer illuminated? It is not. Copy.
Включаю дисплей плюс ТВ.
And I'm sending command 17, display plus TV is on.
Вызвал дисплей плюс ТВ.
Display plus TV has been sent, and I see the rendezvous and approach display.
Значит, готовы в 10-12.
We are ready at 10-12-00. We are ready to send E2 accelerometer power command.
Вы даете с ПК команду И2.
Correct. Please issue E2 command.
Команда подготовлена.
The command is ready.
На что, Петя, готов?
The International Space Station soon will go into what's known as free drift, temporarily disabling the use of any thrusters so as not to perturbate The undocking process for the Soyuz MS-19 vehicle. We're 9 minutes away from the issuance of the command to begin opening up the hooks holding Soyuz to the Rassvet module.
Astre, we confirm you can issue the RDR command at 10:12:00. All right, 1 minute.
секунд.
5 seconds. 3, 2, 1.
Выдал И2 в 10:12:00.
E2 has been issued. Accelerometer power is on. KDU repress is on. BDUS is on, and I am turning on TV8. From
the International Space Station approaching the coast of Chile, again moving from northwest to southeast, soon to begin a swing across the South Atlantic on this orbit of the Earth.
We're standing by for
about 8 minutes away from entering an orbital sunrise just before undocking. Once again, just to review the timeline, undocking scheduled at 2:21 a.m. Central Time, 3:21 a.m. Eastern Time, about a minute after physical separation. Anton Shkaplerov will conduct a back-away burn, about a 13-second burn of the Soyuz engines to initiate an opening rate that will take the Soyuz back to a distance of about 70 meters away from the Rassvet module before he begins a short period of station keeping to allow Pyotr Dubrov to move from the center section or descent module, which the crew is strapped into right now, to the upper section of the orbital module to begin photography and videography of the Russian segment of the International Space Station.
To the orbital module, the first images shots should be taken so that you can see the passive MRM-1 docking node. I will do my best, but translating into the orbital module may take a little bit more time than planned due to all the stowed cargo items. Well, these are going to be like your first shots, but do your best to take images, to take pictures of the docking node at the distance of about 7-10 meters. I'll do my best. I copy what you want, and I'll do my best. Agreed.
Six minutes away from physical separation, about 4.5 minutes until the undocking command is issued to begin a 90-second process of opening the hooks that have held the Soyuz MS-19 in place at the Rassvet module.
Today, departing.
Thank you very much.
NASA astronaut Kayla Barron with a traditional ringing of the ship's bell to acknowledge the fact that their colleagues, their crewmates, are about to depart the International Space Station.
Docking node in video mode. All right, I'll do my best. Copy.
МТС, ЦУП мосту, становец Г1 для Олега.
Moscow Station, Space and Ground 1 for Oleg.
Guys, we still do not have attitude readiness GSO flag.
Go ahead.
Should we continue?
Oleg,
For now,
we'll give you
continue.
a go to turn off the recording mode.
Step 8 of the radiogram, if you could. Copy.
This view now from an external cross-haired engineering camera on the Soyuz MS-19. You'll be seeing views of the International Space Station from this camera, and we are expecting views of the Soyuz departing the Rassvet module from truss cameras on the U.S. side through the KU band communications system.
We don't.
Less than 2.5 minutes away from the undocking command to be issued.
Recording mode.
D1, and you haven't... So D2 at 16, and do you still not have attitude readiness? No, we don't. 10, 18, 30. In 90 seconds, we're going to be activating SSVP, docking and internal transfer system mode.
Секунд.
30 seconds. Astray. At 10, 18, 30, please activate the docking and internal transfer system and monitor that commands go through. Copy. We are standing by for 10 seconds.
1 minute away from the issuance of the undocking command. 2.5 minutes away
30.
from physical separation.
Mode, mechanical connection is illuminated. The 11, the 17, get 17 illuminated.
The International Space Station now in free drift.
Is illuminated. And I'm moving on to page 246. We're getting ready for the undocking.
The Soyuz docking mechanism now powered up.
We are ready for the undocking on your go. And at 10, 19, 30, we are ready to open the hooks. Astray. At 10, 19, 30, please.
Standing by for the issuance of the undocking command.
Copy. Correction. D, Delta 17. 10, 19, 30. Delta 17 command, hooks open, is sent. S13 is no longer illuminated. S11 is illuminated.
The command has been issued.
Okay.
Hooks are driving.
Stand by till mechanical connection is no longer illuminated and verify that the SSVP internal docking and transfer system mode is complete, and get ready for the separation. And
About 1 minute until physical separation.
I will hand you over.
Entering an orbital sunrise over the South Atlantic.
Подождите, сейчас я подготовлю.
Piotr, let me get it ready. Okay. Mechanical connection is no longer illuminated.
Ожидаем режима ССВП выполнен.
Copy and stand by for the SSVP mode complete flag.
Undocking confirmed.
We confirm mechanical.
At 2:21 a.m. Central Time, 3:21 a.m. Eastern Time over the South Atlantic, the Soyuz MS-19 begins the journey home to complete a year-long odyssey for Mark Vande Hei and Pyotr Dubrov.
So, not being illuminated. Indicator mode is no longer illuminated. We confirm attitude readiness GSO illuminated. The flag is up. Great. And you're transitioning to the manual control then. Copy. This is Andrei Shalamov. Please proceed as concurred. Page 246. Page 246, right?
At the bottom of your view is the orbital module, in this case on the right side of the Soyuz as it backs away from the Rassvet module. That is where Pyotr Dubrov will be making his way to begin digital still photography and to capture video of the Russian segment of the station.
Okay.
The crew is currently in the center section of the Soyuz called the descent module, the only section that returns to Earth.
RODK digital control mode is on. We confirm RODK and we confirm translational hand controller. And do you want me to switch to the digital control mode display? Yes, please.
Anton Shkaplerov in manual control of the flying of the Soyuz.
And I confirm SVSK. Copy. And you can play with the HSC mode if you'd like.
Thrusters firing on the Soyuz vehicle as it continues to back away from the International Space Station. On the right side, one of the Ultraflex solar arrays on the Northrop Grumman Cygnus spacecraft.
Working with the HSC mode. Okay, now the video is much better. Maybe 2 marks, Anton? Okay, Pyotr is working with the HSC mode, and let's switch over. And I'm monitoring the process on the periscope, VSK. Okay, and let's try the Mark 3. No luck? No. There is nothing, there is no middle ground there. Okay, sounds good. Okay, Anton. Okay, let it be just like that. So the docking node is clean. There is no FOD. And we are 3 meters away from the docking node. Copy. Have you sent the command for the separation? Not yet. All right, well, stand by, and at 13 seconds, go ahead. All right, the command has been sent. Copy.
The back-away burn in progress. This will put the Soyuz at a position about 70 meters from the International Space Station to allow Dubrov to move to the upper section of the orbital module to set up for photography and videography of the ISS.
The deviation should not be more than 10 degrees. It's 1 degree. It's about 2 squares currently. Anton, as you are departing, try playing with the AGC mode a little bit more to see if we can improve the image. Copy. Pyotr, let's put it in work. And in work. Can you leave it like this? 2 notches. Okay, let's leave it like this. Copy. We are approaching the docking node. We're about 1 square away. Copy. The size is 1 square. I am performing station keeping. Concur. All right. Station keeping for 14 seconds. Please monitor. All right. We are in station keeping mode. I am performing the roll maneuver. Copy.
The Soyuz has reached a station-keeping point about 70 meters, and you can see a roll program initiated under the manual control of Soyuz Commander Anton Shkaplerov. This will place the Soyuz at the right orientation so that the window in the orbital module, the upper section of the Soyuz, is properly aligned to enable Pyotr Dubrov to conduct digital still photography and videography of the Russian segment. This view now from the external engineering camera on the outside of the Soyuz.
Monitor the range while you are performing station keeping. It's a go to proceed. Copy, in work. Okay, Pyotr, please start your activity, taking pictures and video, and God bless you.
Pyotr Dubrov making his way from the left seat in the descent module of the Soyuz up to the orbital module to begin photography. A short time from now, Shkaplerov will maneuver the Soyuz manually from its current station-keeping position over to the axis that will look directly at the Prishal node module, that is attached to the Nauka multipurpose laboratory module for additional photography and videography.
У меня есть.